Lest we forget. Well, guess what we did? We did forget. The whole point of Remembrance Day, that being a Commonwealth Day, when we remember those who made sacrifices in World War I and World War II. That's the phrase. Lest we forget. What happens? Well, here we are. Right back at it again. We didn't learn anything. We're still going right back into the same kind of wars that we told ourselves not to forget about. Why? Because we did nothing to deal with why they happened to begin with. Wars don't happen because people bad. That's essentially ANCAP nonsense. Well, people are naturally bad, so wars happen. And, not ANCAP. Liberal. That's a liberal view. That we just naturally go to war because people bad. And all we have to do is remind ourselves how bad war is, and then it won't happen again. What complete and utter nonsense. Bad people don't cause wars. Bad systems cause wars. Bad systems, like capitalism. It makes you wonder how history portrays World War I. Oh, yeah, the Archduke guy, he got killed, and that just made everybody shoot each other at once. Bull. That war was going to happen anyway. The old imperialist powers had all reached the limits of their national capitals, and they had to expand into more territory. Except they were all relatively at a similar level of development, and they all ran up against each other's borders. So then what? That made war inevitable. Because imperialism makes war inevitable, and capitalism makes imperialism inevitable. Makes me wonder what maybe the conservative view of lest we forget is supposed to be. Oh, right. Because when it comes to both liberals and conservatives, it's always been about celebrate the men who continue to fight on behalf of imperialist wars. Now, lest we forget is supposed to be a peace message. Lest we forget what happens when war goes on and remind ourselves never again. But, over the decades, that's just become a general pro-imperialist statement. You have to support the troops no matter what. And that very old, tired excuse for imperialist cheering. Well, you can support the men, not the mission. No, you can't. I don't support crime, but I support criminals. Huh. I'm going to support the man, but not the mission, right? The fact is, imperialist conquest continues. It's continuing to this day in the form of a war, a proxy war between the United States and Russia over Ukraine. And all manner of reasons going into why it happens. If you were to believe the liberals, you would say Russia attacked Ukraine unprovoked. There was no reason for it. Just in case you forgot that the whole 8 years of shelling Donbass, existed. And the whole thing about we will not join NATO, and then part of the conditions was that they did not join NATO and then turn around and do it. And the fact that Ukraine was planning an invasion of Donbass, Crimea, etc. Like, was it 2 more days, and then Russia invaded before they could? And all of this is really over oil, energy resources, natural gas. Who's going to be that supreme supplier? Who's it going to be? Who's going to make that money? It's not just a battle of East and West. It's far more complicated than that. It's far more complicated than Putin bad or America bad. Such ideas are complete and utter nonsense for children. The U.S. as a global hegemonic power is in decline, and its competitors are seeing an opening. This has to do with competition in terms of natural gas. Who's going to get it out to Europe? And it looked like Russia was winning. And the U.S. had to come in and do something to stop it, to counter it. Because the United States is not dependent on Russia the way that it's dependent on China for manufacturing. So it allows for a more open hostility, a more willingness to engage in violence. And the Eastern powers see their opportunity to rise and get the profits that were once the exclusive property of the U.S. empire. China, Russia, to a degree Iran. I wouldn't call Iran an empire, but they're seeing their chance. People tend to forget that Iran is still capitalist. All these countries are still capitalist, no matter how much protestation to the contrary. China is still a capitalist country, and it is still run on a profit basis. And that's where we are. Capitalism slowly inching us toward a third world war. Maybe. The prospect of a third world war is far more complicated than the past two have been, with the advent of nuclear weapons and the mutually assured destruction principle. If nuclear weapons didn't exist, I think we might already be in a world war. But because there's that big red line, nuclear line, that makes everything more complicated. But what's important here is that we are still heading towards it. Not as fast as we used to, not as reliably as we used to, but we are. We are headed in that direction because the contradictions among imperialism and capitalism haven't changed. They're still there because capitalist imperialism is still there. And this competition between these powers for profit is what continues to drive this situation. If only that was the lesson that we should have learned, the one that we shouldn't have forgot. Lest we forget, we didn't even learn. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.